But darker storm clouds are gathering, with the terrifying specter of mass layoffs looming over hotels and the public humiliation of Caesars Entertainment being cast out of the S&P 500. Visitors are now forced to ask the unthinkable. Is the Las Vegas Strip a gilded trap? Caesars Entertainment, once a towering symbol of Vegas glamour, the name behind legendary resorts, Caesars Palace, Flamingo, and Paris Las Vegas, is now caught in a death spiral unseen in decades. And behind the cold hard numbers of crushing debt and plummeting stock prices, and its shameful removal from the S&P 500 index, lies a terrifying truth that the executives dare not speak. 50,000 people, the very backbone of this city, are being pushed to the precipice of losing their homes, their livelihoods, and their very faith in this glittering mirage. They weren't the high rollers gambling with chips. They were the ones gambling with their lives to keep the wheels of Vegas turning. From the dealers with their steady hands, the tireless room service staff, the masterful chefs, to the vigilant security guards who watch over the city's long nights. Now they are the ones forced into the biggest gamble of all, in a cruel game where the house has maliciously turned against its own. While rents in Clark County have nearly doubled in a mere 4 years and homelessness has surged by a horrifying 12%, those who once polished the opulence of Caesars to a brilliant shine now find themselves cast into the shadows, living on the razor's edge between survival and despair. Join us as we unravel the twisted threads of this tragedy, from the cold calculations of the boardroom to the heartbreaking reality of a folding bed in a car trunk, to expose why the shattering of an icon could condemn 50,000 human lives to the cruelest game of chance in Las Vegas. $12.3 billion, a staggering sum that represents the lifetime earnings of nearly 4,000 American families combined. Yet, this is the very millstone of debt that is dragging Caesars and Las Vegas itself into the abyss. A symbol once celebrated as the arena of the American dream has devolved into a horrifying testament to the catastrophic cost of unchecked corporate greed. The last 9 months have been nothing short of a nightmare for Vegas. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the LVCVA, reports that visitor numbers have stagnated month after agonizing month, a grim omen that has crippled business activity and sent shockwaves through hotel and casino empires like the vulnerable Caesars. In the second quarter of 2025 alone, Caesars Las Vegas revenue plunged by a disastrous 3.7%. This may sound insignificant to the insulated executive, but for an ecosystem this massive, it means tens of millions of dollars have simply vanished into thin air. Occupancy rates plummeted by 2 full percentage points. A catastrophic loss equivalent to 27,000 empty silent room nights in just 3 short months. The final deafening alarm bell rang when Caesars was disgracefully ejected from the S&P 500, a direct result of its collapsing revenue and profits, its free-falling stock price, and a mountain of debt so immense it could no longer pretend to meet the index's standards for size or stability. It's no mystery. How could a corporate giant, drowning in $2.3 billion of its own toxic debt, maintain its charade among the titans of the American economy? Crushed by the pressure, a desperate Caesars began selling off its crown jewels, hawking major assets like the World Series of Poker and the Link Promenade for a quick cash infusion. But this is nothing more than a band-aid on a festering wound, a frantic attempt to treat the symptoms while completely ignoring the corporate cancer eating it from within. So, what is the real reason Caesars is teetering on the brink of collapse? If you truly want to understand this catastrophe, you must let the numbers tell their own sordid tale. A single night in a standard room can demand up to $300, a price that seems almost reasonable for a so-called luxury hotel. But the financial assault doesn't stop there. Attached to that room rate is the most predatory, infamous charge in all of Vegas: the resort fee. While this fee typically hovers between $40 to $50 per night, the Caesars system has the audacity to demand a staggering $55. Legally, Vegas shamefully permits hotels to levy these resort fees. The outrage stems from the blatant, almost comical disparity between what you pay and what you receive. These surcharges are buried deep in the fine print, yet they almost never correspond to any new, convincing services or upgrades. Consequently, tourists are ambushed into paying an extra fee that rivals the cost of a budget room, all for a vague list of amenities or services they will never use. The hemorrhaging of international visitors only ripped the hole in the balance sheet wider. According to Caesars' own beleaguered leadership, Canadian guests are responsible for a massive portion of those hauntingly empty rooms. The reasons are painfully obvious. A weak Canadian dollar has inflated the total cost of a Vegas trip, airfare, lodging, and meals by an additional crippling 25 to 30%. On travel forums, the verdict is in, and it is damning. Countless Canadians now warn that a miserable 3-night trip to Vegas costs as much as a journey to Europe. But when international crowds turned their backs, they didn't just walk away. They ripped the financial heart out of the city, taking with them the millions of dollars that were the lifeblood of an entire ecosystem. This left a gaping, hemorrhaging wound that couldn't be stitched up overnight, and at the exact same moment, a new poison entered the bloodstream. A plague of local casinos and online betting erupted across the nation. Suddenly, the loyal patrons who once made the pilgrimage to Vegas could get their fix just down the street, or worse, from the palm of their hand. With every new local casino, with every convenient app, the very soul of Vegas, its exclusive, magnetic allure, was being systematically dismantled. Why fly across the country for something you can now get cheaper and easier at home? And once those habits are broken, the spell is shattered. The cost of returning to a city that no longer values you becomes an insult, a price too high to pay for a hollowed-out experience. It was in this desperate climate that Caesars and a chorus of other strip hotels scrambled to join the so-called Welcome to Fabulous campaign, a desperate ploy by the LVCVA to slap a band-aid on a mortal wound and pretend they still offered value. They began hemorrhaging deals, up to a staggering 50% off rooms at Harrah's, Flamingo, The Link, Planet Hollywood, and Horseshoe. 2 to 3 night packages bundled with a hollow promise of $2,250 in food and beverage credits. They slashed prices in half for their flagship attractions, the High Roller, the Fly Link, the Eiffel Tower, even throwing scraps to locals in a pathetic attempt to fill the void. But what did this desperate plea get them? Nothing but the deafening silence of empty hotel corridors and the cold, hard rejection of a public that could no longer be bought so cheaply. The answer was never in their glossy, insulting promotional packages. It was in remembering the very soul of what made Vegas great. A soul they sold for profit. The simple dignity of free parking. It was in the legendary buffets, the honest room rates without predatory fees, and the betting tables that welcomed everyone, not just the whales. They destroyed the very reasons people fell in love with this city. Can you really buy back trust with a 50% off coupon? Or is it earned through transparency and basic human respect? If Vegas continues down this dark path, prioritizing relentless greed over the very people it serves, then what shattered piece of the American dream will be left for the next generation? And in the face of this self-inflicted catastrophe, it wasn't the faceless corporations in their ivory towers that truly bled. It was the people on the ground, the beating heart of the city, who felt every cut. As 8 News Now Las Vegas horrifically reports, a staggering 72,000 people in Nevada are now jobless, with the epicenter of this economic earthquake being Las Vegas, a city built entirely on a promise it can no longer keep. And caught in this corporate death spiral, thousands of Caesars' own employees were not spared. They were thrown directly into the path of the storm as the empire began to crumble. These aren't executives. They are the ordinary people who keep the machine running long after the neon glow fades. But when the tourists vanish, the tips dry up to nothing. Shifts are brutally slashed, and the crushing weight of economic despair settles on every dinner table, on every past due bill. 50,000 listeners might just sound like a statistic, but imagine the entire population of a city like Santa Fe, New Mexico, being cast out onto the streets overnight. This is not some far-off prediction, this is a clear and present danger. The fallout is already poisoning the valley. Look at the Poker Palace in North Las Vegas, a 50-year institution, a landmark with its 25,000 square feet of history, unceremoniously sold off and shuttered. The immediate carnage, dozens of managers were cast into a terrifying limbo, clinging to the faint hope of a transfer, while over 126 loyal employees were thrown out, completely and utterly abandoned. Each one of them now carries the crushing burden of how to feed their families. Suddenly, the cold numbers on a spreadsheet are no longer abstract. They are the terrifying reality of lost hours and overdue rent notices. They are the death of 1,000 small dreams for an entire community. When the very hands that dealt the cards and poured the drinks were erased from the schedule, the fracture in the foundation of this community was no longer a distant threat. It was a chasm opening right at our feet. And this terrifying trend was only accelerating. In August alone, another 4,300 jobs vanished into thin air, a 0.4% drop in a single month. That's 5,000 jobs lost compared to the year before. The bleeding would not stop. Zoom out, and the picture becomes even more horrifying. For months on end in 2025, Nevada wore the crown of shame, consistently ranking as the worst or among the worst states for unemployment in the entire country. These are not just statistics. They are shattered lives. People who poured their entire existence into this city are now being forced to flee, becoming economic refugees in their own country. They are desperately seeking any sanctuary, any other city or country, to escape this vicious cycle of corporate greed and human suffering. And on the front lines of this corporate war are the invisible people, the dealers, the servers, the technicians, the security guards, the silent gears in the grand machine that manufactures dreams for tourists. But when that schedule shrinks, their own dreams are the first to be crushed. They are the first pawns sacrificed on the altar of corporate greed. But this catastrophe doesn't end with mere job cuts. This is a domino effect of ruin that has been set in motion for a very long time. The very backbone of the service industry has been systematically shattered, sending fissures of decay through small businesses, daycare centers, low-cost clinics, and even community churches. The supposedly eternal wheel of fortune has ground to a sickening halt, exposing the cavernous, empty soul of Vegas. When the very hands that built this illusion are brutally cast aside, who, I ask, will possess the strength to keep this hollow city from collapsing? And if the American dream has devolved into a desperate escape plan, what damning legacy are we bequeathing to the next generation? A city of nothing but hollow lights, or a community that has forgotten how to even hold hands? Make no mistake, Las Vegas never ceased its blinding performance. From afar, the neon still burns, the colossal screens still scream of extravagant spectacles. But dare to venture down a single side street just a few blocks behind the Strip's facade, and you will plunge into a harrowing alternate reality, where flimsy nylon roofs tremble in the wind, a pathetic mockery of solid homes. Here, the only warmth offered through the night is the merciless heat radiating from the desert pavement. And right there, at the feet of billion-dollar towers of excess, the tent city festers and expands with each passing day. Clark County's 2025 pit count report is a chilling indictment, officially recording 7,960 individuals without a home, with over a horrifying 53% living completely exposed to the elements. That number is not a statistic on poverty. It is a scream from a society that is cracking apart as rent costs explode by a staggering 21% between 2020 and 2025, while the wages of service workers creep up by a pathetic 3%. The chasm between the blinding light and the suffocating shadow widens relentlessly, millimeter by millimeter. Its brutal reality becoming more undeniable with every passing month. You need only look under the I-15 bridge to witness the grim tableau. Sprawling rows of tents where people use plastic barrels as walls and siphon power through dangerous, makeshift wires tapped from streetlights. This is a route the police now deliberately avoid, while just a few hundred meters away, oblivious lines of tourists eagerly queue to be fed their next manufactured fantasy. A glittering Vegas exists in lockstep with a Vegas stripped bare. Two worlds, two fates, coexisting in the cold glare of the same light. And among those tents, you will find the people who once stood at the very center of that light. A 67-year-old man who once engineered delighting at the MGM Grand now occupies a makeshift shelter less than 2 kilometers from the strip he helped illuminate. I still listen to the music every night, he says, his voice heavy with resignation. It's just that I can't get tickets anymore. That statement may sound simple, but it is an epitaph for the brokenness of an entire generation. Those who served the Vegas dream, only to be devoured and discarded by that very same dream. The haunting image of neon lights reflecting on thin, trembling nylon sheets has become the defining symbol of the Las Vegas paradox. A place where grotesque opulence and abject destitution collide, separated by nothing more than a single street. And just like those neon lights, everything here is dazzling, but terrifyingly fragile. With just one powerful gust of wind, the entire tent city could be scoured from the earth in the dead of night, only to rematerialize the next morning in a new location, as if Vegas itself is replicating its own festering wounds. What a grotesque irony that a city built to sell fantasies is now desperately struggling to maintain a grip on reality, as the thousands of workers who built its prosperity are violently pushed to the margins. This is no longer just an economic crisis. It is a profound crisis of ethics, a test of our collective memory, and a desperate plea to see if an icon can ever reclaim its human soul. We see the token efforts from corporate giants like Caesars Entertainment making a public show of collaborating with the Help Hope Home initiative to promise shelter support and vocational training, and the Back to Work Las Vegas program is trotted out as a sign of progress. But these are mere band-aids on a mortal wound. As long as housing prices continue their relentless climb and incomes remain stagnant, and as long as parasitic hidden fees continue to bleed workers' wallets dry, the tent city will forever remain the dark shadow cast by that blinding light. Can Las Vegas even find human value again amidst its own dazzling, soulless spectacle? And if this supposed heaven is already built upon a literal hell at its feet, what will happen when the final, inevitable dominoes continue to fall? The downfall of Caesars was never an isolated crisis. It was the first terrifying shockwave of a chain reaction now tearing its way across all of southern Nevada. When one of Vegas's most enduring titans begins to falter, the entire system that feeds upon it, from hotels and restaurants to taxis and suburban neighborhoods, begins to shake violently in unison. If Vegas was once the beating heart of the American entertainment industry, that heart is now in the throes of a severe and terrifying arrhythmia. And the sickest irony of all? The American Gaming Association's State of the State's 2025 report boasts that revenue from iGaming and local casinos hit an obscene $8.41 billion in 2024, an increase of nearly 28%, a deceptive 7% surge compared to the previous year. That boom, which was heralded as a sign of recovery for the industry, is now the very poison eroding the will to even travel to Vegas. Once the undisputed capital of chance, its power is being bled dry by the sheer convenience of playing cards in your own state, or worse, on a soulless phone app. The very exclusivity that built Las Vegas over decades is crumbling into dust, and the catastrophic effects are spreading like a contagion, far faster than any analyst dared to predict. The LVCVA's chilling mid-year report laid the truth bare. A devastating collapse in citywide hotel occupancy and revenue during the summer of 2025. The entire support system, restaurants, taxi services, tour buses, began a brutal culling of staff, triggering a social domino effect that is tearing through the community. As tourist revenue evaporated, restaurants bled out, leading to a tidal wave of job losses in the service industry that then crashed into the food supply and logistics sectors. A city that once ran like a flawless, well-oiled machine is now grinding to a halt, its smallest gears seizing in protest. And make no mistake, even the hallowed Vegas Strip was not spared from the carnage. According to the Nevada Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, DETR, in 2025, the unemployment rate in the Las Vegas metropolitan area has skyrocketed to a horrifying 5.8%. A sickness that is now metastasizing to Henderson, Primm, and Boulder City. When the city's heart begins to fail, its satellite communities, utterly dependent on the flow of tourist and service revenue, are the first to wither and die. Local restaurants are boarded up, apartment buildings stand like hollowed-out skeletons, and once vibrant streets have fallen into an eerie, deathly quiet. And beneath it all, another, more subtle poison was at work. The disappearance of international visitors. The crucial flow of tourists, especially from Canada, has been choked off. A crippled Canadian dollar and soaring travel costs have decimated their numbers. In a moment of shocking honesty, Caesars' own CEO confessed to his shareholders that this is the single most devastating absence in their entire failed recovery cycle. Because when the foreign tourists, the high rollers who spend more than double what domestic visitors do, simply vanish, Vegas doesn't just lose money. It loses the very lifeblood of an economy built on pure,